Welcome back. Now we answer questions we receive from you, our viewers. If you have a question, visit our website, QuranSpeaks.com. Dr. Shabir, here is a very simple question. Does the Quran include the 10 commandments?
Well, not in a list like this. And in fact, to be sure, the Bible itself does not say these are 10 commandments. The Bible gives us a list of commandments in two main passages, in Exodus chapter 20 and in Deuteronomy chapter 5. But it doesn't say these are commandments 1, 2, 3, 4. And it was left to Muslim scholars, scholars of the Bible rather, scholars of the Bible went into these lists and they have tried to decipher 10 commandments out of this. But, the lists vary from one scholar to another, depending on where they stop one commandment and start the other one. Sometimes things are combined. But somehow the idea is that they should have 10 and they're trying to get 10 out of this. Now, in the Quran, there are also lists of commandments. For example, in Surah, the 6th Surah of the Quran, verses 151 to 153. And we also have in the 17th chapter of the Quran, starting with verse number 23. Again, a list of commandments. And these commandments are very similar to the commandments which are listed among the 10 from Deuteronomy and the book of Exodus. The two notable exceptions is that the mention of taking God's name in vain, which is often listed as the third commandment from the Bible. This is not mentioned in these lists of commandments in the Quran. And the prohibition against working on the Sabbath, which is the fourth commandment from the Bible, is not mentioned in the Quran. Of course, we can understand why this is so, because in the Quran, the Sabbath is replaced by the Friday observance. And Muslims are told in the Quran in the 62nd chapter, when the call is made for prayer on Friday, they should leave off work and hasten to the remembrance of God. So there is still the remembrance of God. There is still a sacred day, but the day is still permits us to work. The presumption in the Quran is that you will work before and after the prayer. It's only at the prayer time that you need to abandon business and come to the prayer and join the congregation. And as for taking the name of God in vain, that too is a Quranic commandment, though found elsewhere outside of this list of commandments that we've just mentioned.
So can you give me a sense of what the commandments might look like in the Quran?
Yes. For example, let me start, if you don't mind. I start by listing what is known as the 10 Commandments and show that apart from the two, how the Quranic commandments are very similar to this. So the 10 Commandments, often they're listed like this. Do not take any other for God apart from the one true God, the God of Israel. Do not make any graven images to represent God, because God doesn't look like anything on the earth or in the water or in the skies. And you should not take the name of God in vain. You should observe the Sabbath, keep it holy, honor your father and mother. You should not commit murder or adultery or steal or bear false witness or covet your neighbor's wife or property. So these are generally listed as the 10 Commandments. Now, as I said, apart from the third and fourth, the others are all there in these list of commandments in the Quran. In the 17th chapter of the Quran, for example, do not take any for God other than the one God, who is now called Allah in the Arabic language, which is the same word for God that translates Elohim from the Bible and is used in Arabic translations of the Bible as well. So the second one, do not make any images for God. This is throughout the Quran represented again and again. This is like almost the one message in the Quran that is told again and again in so many different ways. They should not make any statues or bow down to any idols or anything like this. So skipping the third and the fourth, we have honoring your parents. The Quran often mentions this, especially in Surah 17, verse number 23, mentioning the mother first, because obviously we have, the mother has done so much more for us in terms of giving birth to us. So the Quran gives greater honor to the mother than to the father. Just a slight reversal of the Bible's order here, but basically the same commandment. Coming to murder, the Quran says, do not take the life because God has made life sacred, and do not even take the life of your unborn or your newly born children. because God is going to provide for you and for them. So the Quran prohibits murder and adultery. The Quran says, La taqrabu zina. Do not come even close to adultery. In terms of stealing, the Quran gives a very strict prescription against the person stealing and a penal order against that person. But the Quran also expands upon that more widely by saying that you should not even shortchange a person that you're doing business with, because that too is a form of stealing, giving short weight or short measure. In terms of bearing false witness, the Quran says, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. Do not speak about things that you have no knowledge about, which is a way of giving false witness. See, one way of giving false witness is that you're deliberately falsifying what you know. Another way is that you don't know, but you're giving evidence anyway. And this is a natural tendency in all of us. Somebody asks us something and we say, I think it's this. And, we start giving our opinions about things. So don't give opinions. And if just say you don't know. That's the end of the matter. And so you avoid giving false witness. And coveting your neighbor's property. The Quran is all about this, about giving back the amana or the trust to the rightful owners. Do not desire what other people have, and so on. So when I was studying at the University of Toronto, one of my professors, Sebastian Gunther, a German scholar, he had written a paper on the Ten Commandments in the Quran.
Okay.
And that's an academic article found in many journals because it's been reprinted several times.
So it's not in one specific place, but it's found scattered throughout the Quran.
Scattered throughout the Quran, and we have a conglomerate of most of these commandments in the 6th chapter, in verses number 51 to 53, and in the 17th chapter, starting with verse number 23.
Very interesting. Thank you for explaining that, Dr. Shabir.
You're quite welcome. If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.